Hello, everyone. I'm Ben Stemrick, and this is the follow-up question where we break down what goes on at City Council in Allentown, the third biggest city in the fifth biggest state. City Council held a regular meeting for the first time in over a month, and it was a long one. It had an 11-page agenda. It started with approving 5 different contracts for things like glass cleaning and traffic signal inspections. Also masonry work, which Council asked about the potential of the city hiring a full-time mason so they do not have to continue contracting the work out. However, no decision was made on that. Council also approved over $350,000 for P. Joseph Lehman Incorporated for professional consulting for Bogart's Covered Bridge Rehab Project. That's over on Oxford Drive by the Lehigh Parkway. And of course, in the summer of 2022, we can't go an episode without talking about the American Rescue Plan funding. This week, Council untabled a vote to have a special meeting regarding both the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs minor league baseball team and the Da Vinci Center and their requests for $1.5 million in ARPA funding each. Those measures were both passed 4-3. However, that does not mean the funds were approved. It just means special meetings will be held regarding those two requests, and we'll hear more about that later in this episode. Also during the meeting, Council passed Resolution 116, which would ensure the city covers any employee travel expenses related to having an abortion if laws were implemented restricting that right. It passed 6-1 with Councilmember Daryl Hendricks being the dissenting vote.
We are recommending that should the need arise, we will investigate cover such expenses up to a certain amount to be determined through an amendment to the personal code and budget. Should the need arise, this simply expresses our intent to do so. And this is for city employees. This is not for the entire city of Allentown. And actually what this is we're just expressing for now our opinion on this, and should this happen, then we will have an intent on what we will do about it.
Councilmember Josh Siegel says he hopes to take the protection of abortion rights for Allentown residents even further. I sat down with him and asked what that could look like. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate you giving me some time as always. Last night we had a lengthy city council meeting. I think it was our first one back in about a month.
Yep.
It was good to see. There were a few people there, even on a hot day. There were some interesting things on the agenda. One, that has been floating around for a while now is that Iron Pig ARPA money and Da Vinci Center as well.
Yep.
We talked about that, and that was voted to go to special meeting. Excuse me. Now, we've had that on the table for a little bit now to go to a special meeting. We last week had the tourism and entertainment special meeting, which I think a lot of people anticipated that being talked about there, but it was not. Why was that? Why was that not talked about?
I think at the time meeting was to sort of get a better sense for what the tourism industry offers in general for the Lehigh Valley. And I don't think it was specific to any one project or proposal. It was really to get testimony from economic development officials and then industry experts in tourism. We heard from Discover Lehigh Valley, really just about what the Valley gains from having visitors and really like a tourist-based economy. So it wasn't really supposed to be project specific, which is why we really didn't have either the Iron Pigs or Da Vinci on the agenda item in the meeting at the time.
Now, any idea when that special meeting is going to be?
Hopefully in the near future, but as of now, no idea as to exactly when it'll be.
Is that going to be public? Is that something that people are going to be able to tune in for?
Absolutely, it'll be a public meeting.
Okay, great. Another very interesting and hot topic around the whole country right now that was brought up was abortion, and the city moved to, in case it's ever necessary, to help employees of the city get to proper abortion treatment if needed. It sounds like you're trying to go a little further and take that a little further with some ordinances that you haven't put out yet, but it sounds like you're working on. Tell me about that and what you have coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, so I have 4 ordinances coming down the pipeline that will provide more of a blanket protection to everybody within the confines of the city of Allentown. So last night, that resolution was like sort of like a trigger ordinance or trigger resolution in that Obviously, it only takes effect in the event that abortion is criminalized or outlawed or significantly curtailed here in Pennsylvania. In that event, we want to step up like a lot of private companies have and provide that blanket of security to their employees. But we also can't forget that there are obviously many women in the city of Allentown clearly don't work for the city that we need to make sure we protect as well. Yeah. And so my ordinances are going to seek to do just that by cracking down on crisis pregnancy centers and clinics that ultimately try to mislead or dissuade women from getting an abortion and exercising their pro health care rights. And then a series of ordinances that will ultimately kind of make Allentown a safe spot and a safe zone for women seeking abortion services, especially from out of state. And so those ordinances I'll be unveiling those next week at a press conference and announcing the specific details. But right now, what people need to understand is that I'm working on proposals that will provide protection to anyone within the city of Allentown, regardless of their employment, whether they work for the city or not. And anyone who comes to Allentown from outside the area or from outside the state to get an abortion, we're working on protecting those women as well.
This is definitely a hot button topic. Even not all of council voted in favor of just the city employees. What are you hearing on the local level? Are you hearing from both sides a lot, or are you hearing a lot about this in general?
No, I think that the vast majority of people, if you look, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, everybody broadly supports access to abortion, especially whether it's rape or incest or the life of a mother. And most people generally believe that, especially before that point of fetal viability, that you should have the absolute, right to do as you see fit, with your body. And I'm kind of just made that it wasn't a unanimous or 100%, 7-0 vote. It's disappointing. We're a Democratic city. All 7 members of council are ostensibly Democrats. And it's disheartening to see that kind of disunity, especially when it comes to our own employees and not being able to provide that service. But to be honest, on the ground, I think the vast majority of people think that this push to ban, restrict, curtail, or altogether just completely outlaw abortion is not just insane, but dangerous. And that women will pay for it with their lives and their health.
Another thing that seemed to be a little all over the agenda were parks in the city. Yep. There was a resident that stood up beforehand, and she spoke about the east side, and she felt that it was being neglected. In here, there's money from the Trexler Fund for one of the parks, Valania Park money as well. That's been, that project's been going on for what feels like forever. Talk to me a little bit about that. What kind of priority are parks in the city? And talk to me about the expansion outside of just downtown.
They are a priority. They're a high priority. And to be frank, we've been making serious capital investments in parks across the city. Now, obviously, some of our center city parks, Valania in particular, had been, sort of a backlogged, park for a while in terms of maintenance. It didn't get the due diligence that it deserved. And now we're making that capital improvement. But, the park in question, Andre Reed Park, is we approved just last year the improvements to Irving Pool. So there are significant capital investments being made in the quality of those parks all around the city. I don't think there's any one region that isn't a priority. It's just a matter of making sure that we improvements, in relation to how long some of these parks have been neglected or how long maintenance has been deferred. And some parks have been waiting longer than others. And it's important that we get to those that have waited longer first, just because the longer you wait, the more they're going to decay. And Valania Park really did need the improvements. And it's a heavily utilized park. Obviously, center city parks are closer to large population densities, so they're going to be used by more individuals. So we need to make sure we're prioritizing parks that are already decaying or falling apart, where you do see a lot of foot traffic, you do see a lot of usage. But there's no part of the city that isn't a priority. And the east side's a high priority for me. I live there, I reside there. So I want to see, Andre Reed Park look as good as it possibly can. And the other issue she spoke to is just making sure that parks are safe and clean and that people respect them, which is something that we're going to look to address in this year's budget.
Now, I know you're not on the Parks and Recs committee, so you might not have this information, but any updates on Valania Park, where we're at in that process? I was down there recently. It's pretty tore up at this point, it seems.
Yeah, we're obviously in the initial phases of construction. Projects is moving forward. We had to cut down a lot of the trees. Some of the trees there were quite large and kind of old, so those have been removed. Progress being made. I mean, these things take time, but if you want a good quality product and a park that's going to last for multiple generations, We want to make sure we get it right, but there has been no slowdown. We're moving forward.
You think it's going to be done by fall or winter?
I hope. I don't have an exact timeline. I don't know. Something I could follow up with Karen Elchar on, but I know we're never insensitive to the fact that when a park center construction, obviously it can't be used. So, we want to move as fast as we can.
A few other things before we get out of here. Council is having discussions on potentially eliminating incarceration over unpaid parking tickets. Councilmember Hendricks says there are meetings being scheduled for those discussions. $50,000 more were allocated to the Valania Park construction project. Now that money comes from the Trexler Fund, which is set up to benefit city parks. Also, officials say they intend to file an application for the 2023 Childhood Obesity Prevention and Environmental Health and Sustainability Grant for $175,000. And lastly, the city said goodbye to Leonard Leitner, the Chief Operating Officer. He started with the city in 2008 and was promoted to the COO earlier this year. Councilmember Cece Gerlach said goodbye to Leitner and spoke about their sometimes combative time working together.
When you first came around, I didn't like you. I didn't trust you. It was bad. But over the years, I can't say I've agreed with every approach. I think we have very different perspectives on how to approach an issue. I'll grab a sign and protest. You will methodically sit out and plot and plan. And I just want to say that you leaving is a loss for the city. And I mean that not just in like the rhetorical way that we always say it, but like there are people that work in this city that traditionally did not see themselves, people that look like them working in this city, especially someone at a high level, and now they are here. And I hope that they all stay and continue to move up and then sit in that chair eventually, or the other chair even. So I would like to thank you for being the trailblazer, for helping people come in here, for being a mentor to people.
That's going to do it for this episode of The Follow-Up Question. I'm Ben Stemrick, and this meeting was over an hour and a half long, and I sat through it, so you do not have to. But if you want to, you can go to the city website and watch old or live meetings. The next meeting is scheduled for August 3rd. Thanks for paying attention.